Hello, Year 11s. I'm trying my best to not sound super breathy. Thank you, Nicole, for pointing that out. What I'm going to do with these videos is, so in your contingency books, you've got notes from the textbook on how to do certain skills. What I'm going to focus these videos on is maybe just having a go at a few questions so you have an idea of how to maybe approach it and how to set out your work. Particularly because I might not be able to see all of you in class. So what we're doing in the first section of the contingency booklet, we went through how to solve simultaneous equations, and there were two methods. The first one was the substitution method, which is what these first two questions I'm going to go through look at. So with the substitution method, what we want to do is we want to write one pronumeral as the subject of an equation and then substitute it into the other one. So let's have a go at this first example. So I have y is equal to 2x. I'm going to call this equation number 1. I've got 3x plus 2y. When we're using substitution, the condition that we need is that one of our pronumerals is the subject of an equation. So what that means is we've done this with our algebraic techniques. We want it in the form where we have one pronumeral. So for example, y, and it's equal to some expression on the right-hand side. Or x is equal to some expression on the right-hand side, or any whatever letter you want. You could be to be honest, it could be apple for all I care. Apple is equal to blah, 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 blah. That's a terrible apple. So if you have a look at our first example here, we already have that. If you have a look at equation number 1, we've got y is equal to 2x. And so with the substitution method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute this first equation, so y is equal to 2x, into my second one. So whenever I see y in my second equation, I'm just going to replace it with 2x. So I'm going to write my steps out. So when I write my steps, I like setting it out really nicely so that I know every step that I'm doing. So here for the first step, I'm going to go sub 1 into 2. I'm going to substitute the first equation into the second one. So let's do that. I've got in my second equation plus 2 times. Well, I see I have 2y, which is just 2 times y. I'm just going to replace y with 2x, and that's equal to 14. Now that I've done that, I'm going to just simplify my expression. So I've got 3x plus 2 times 2x. 2 times 2x is just 4x. So when I add that all together, I'm just going to get 7x here. Okay, cool. I'm solving for x, so I'm going to divide both sides by 7. So I'm going to get x is equal to 2. I'm going to just write the step. So I'm going to divide by 7. Okay, cool. So I have my first value here. Now with simultaneous equations, we don't just want the value of one pronumeral, we need the value of both pronumerals. So I need a value for y as well. To do that, what I can do is I can substitute my x value that I found here back into any of the two equations I have up the top. Any of the two. Now, there's going to be an obvious choice as to which one's the easiest one. If you have a look, I'm going to probably substitute it into equation number 1. The reason being is it's already in the form y is equal to a value. And I just want that value for y. If I substitute it into the other one, I need to do a few more steps in order to get there. So I'm going to substitute it into y is equal to 2x. So here, let's have a go at that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write for my following step, sub into equation number 1. So I'm going to get y is equal to 2 times 2. So y is equal to 4. And so we have our other value. So x is equal to 2 and y is equal to 4. And in the notes, I've also written, usually you want to write a summary step of what you've done. So I'm going to write here, therefore, what have we found? We found that y is equal to 4. There's my summary, and that's my final answer. So here with your substitution method, we want to have one of our pronumerals as a subject of an equation. That's what we had in equation number 1. We substitute that equation into the other equation. So that's what we did in this step over here. And then once we found a value for one of our pronumerals, we substitute it back into any of our two equations. Hopefully that one was pretty easy to follow. I have a second example here, and I'm going to show you this one. So this is example H of question 3. Now with this one, it's a little bit trickier. I've got my two equations here. 1, 2. As you notice, hopefully, none of my equations is in the form where I've got one pronumeral being the subject. I don't have y is equal to something or x is equal to something. But what I can do is I can change up my algebra, my equations so that it is, and I can have one of them being the one of my pronumerals being the subject. So if you have a look, the one that I'm going to change is actually equation number 2. The reason being is because if you have a look at my coefficients, well, I've got, for my x's, I've got 2 and 4. I've got 2 and 4. And for my y's, I've got 3 and 1. The fact that I've got a 1y here, or negative 1y in this case, means that I can actually easily change it into the equation so that it's in terms of y. It makes it a lot easier for us to do that. So I'm going to select equation number 2, and I'm going to change up equation number 2. So equation number 2. I'm going to change it up. So I've got 4x minus y is equal to 45. I just want to have y by itself. Now, if you have a look, I have a negative y. I'm just going to move it to the other side so it becomes a positive y. And with this 45, I'm going to move it to this side so that I have y just by itself. So I'm going to swap those two. So here, what's going to happen is I'm going to have 4x. That's not going to move. I'm going to move that 45 over here to this side. Because it's a plus 45, if I move it to the other, it's a positive 45. Because I move it to the other side, it's going to become a minus 45. Okay, so that's the first part. And now that I've done that, I want to move my y to this side on the right-hand side. So it's on its own. So that negative y, when I move it to the other side, becomes positive y. Now, I said in class that mathematicians are a little bit OCD and we like to write things neatly. I'm just going to swap the two sides so that I have y is equal to 4x minus 45. I'm just swapping the two sides so I have it so that my pronumeral that we're finding the subject, changing the subject of, is on its own. So this one, I'm going to call this equation 2a because it's kind of like I've changed equation 2. I've just made a little bit of slight change to it. So I'm going to call it 2a. Okay, now that I've got this, I've got one of my pronumerals as the subject. As we did in the first question, I'm just going to substitute it into the other equation. So here I'm going to substitute. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to sub 2a into equation number 1. So equation number 1, 2x plus 3y is equal to 47. So I'm going to have 2x plus 3y. So I'm going to do 3 times my y equation over here. So I'm going to have 4x minus 45. And that's equal to 47, I believe. Yes, that's correct. Okay, cool. Now I'm just going to solve for x here. Now, I've got brackets. I'm going to get rid of my brackets. I've got 2x plus, when I deal with my brackets, I'm just going to multiply in. So I've got 12x minus 135 is equal to 47. Okay, cool. I'm just going to add my x terms together. But if you notice, there's this negative 135. I'm going to actually combine two steps. Wait, you know what? I'm going to write the two steps up to here. So I've got 2x plus 12x. So I'm going to get 14x minus 135 is equal to 47. Okay. The following step is I need to get rid of this 135 to the other side because it's minus 135. When I move it to the other side, it becomes plus 135. So we've got 14x is equal to 47 plus 135. 14x is equal to, when I add that together, I'm going to get 182. And so I'm going to divide both sides by 14. So x is going to equal to, I think it's 13. And so I've got my x value over here. Okay. Now that I've done that, what do I need to do? I need to sub this x value back into any one of my equations. I can substitute it into 1, I can substitute it into 2, I can substitute it into 2a. I'm going to choose to substitute it into 2a because, as you noticed before, that's already in the form y is equal to. I want to find a y value. This is the one that makes it easiest. So I'm going to sub, and I don't have I need a bit more space. I'm going to write here sub x is equal to 13 into 2a. So I'm going to get y is equal to, what do I have in 2a? 4x minus 45. 4 times 13 minus 45. So y is going to equal to 52 minus 45. Y is equal to. And so we have our summary. Therefore, x is equal to 13. Y is equal to 7. And that's our second example here. So when you're solving simultaneous equations, there's actually quite a few steps involved. And it requires you to actually, hopefully, lay out each step really carefully. So when you're having a go at these questions on substitution, just make sure you lay out the steps really carefully and follow those steps I did here.